Hey, I'm Mudir Fogel and welcome to Travel Warning. We're with Shaul Solomon, who hitchhiked through Kurdistan.
It's the only way to do it. Well, like any good story, it's always the question is where do you start it? I've been traveling for a while, mostly classic places, but I kind of have hit off my bucket list the usual suspects, and I was looking for something that would
Endanger your life.
Sorry. No. What I've learned is the best places are places that were only not so long ago dangerous. And now they're safe because then the locals are really happy that you come, because you're a good sign of like tourism returning. They're not like places where you go and they're just very sick of tourists, right? Like Barcelona or sometimes Thailand. Anyway, we're looking at something and I was in a complex dynamic because my partner had only a week and I had 2.5 weeks. So we wanted to find somewhere which was exciting enough and diverse enough that for a week and a half I could do my own adventure. And also when she comes for the last week, it also feels authentic and we're exploring together. I'm not just showing, look, it's not like I can take her around. We could both have this sense of exploration. And we were playing kind of like looking at a globe and I would point to a place and she's like, been there. And then I'd point to a place and then been there. Then we point together to a place and then the tickets were like 900 euros or something. So it was... and then we looked at Turkey. And my first thought of Turkey was, I was in Istanbul. So I kind of have a sense of Turkish culture and it's beautiful, but didn't feel adventurous. And then I thought, okay, but Turkey is massive. And I don't know so much about anything that isn't, So I started looking and I got into one of the things is that Turkey has a lot of various ethnic groups that live in it. It's quite multicultural. One of the groups was the Kurds. And I didn't know much about the Kurds, but they always somehow popped up in dialogue and conversations. And I think at a certain point when you travel, you're not looking so much for, you're looking to pinpoint on certain things. And sometimes traveling to see, different ethnic groups and different cultures and communities living together seemed very interesting. When we researching about Kurdish people, I learned that the Kurdish people themselves have a form of a Kurdistan, which is unofficial, but it spans 4 countries, which is Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. And in each one of those cases, there's a different complex geopolitical situation. As an Israeli and a Jew, Syria was clearly out of bounds, so was Iran. And so Turkey sounded interesting. And then I was like, but wait, can I go to Iraq? I grew up in the States. So I heard, the US-Iraq war is endless. I thought it was like Afghanistan. Maybe it's being, I had no idea, right? Because I don't follow that part of the news so closely. And then apparently the Kurdish people there, I think through the war with Saddam, got their own autonomous governance. So their police state, the Peshmerga, who are Kurds, more or less run it. There are some, obviously, they're not their own government, so the Iraqis are still there. And then I read, as a US citizen, I can come visit.
All right.
And also I heard that Kurds like the Jews, right? Normally you get one of the two. They're either anti-Semites or philo-Semites. And easier to travel to a philo-Semitic country.
Yes.
Understandable. So my plan was that I would travel through the Kurdish part of Turkey for a week and a half. And then we would meet together with my partner in Erbil, which was the capital of Kurdish Iraq, and then travel together such that I would have my own unique story and we can get back specifically to Iraq. But already once I started getting close to the border, once I hit Mardin and Midyat.
So these are 2 Kurdish towns in the eastern side of Turkey, which are Kurdistani cities, right?
So the Kurdish part of Turkey is quite large. You have a lot of cities from Urfa, Diyarbakir, Kars. They're a very sizable minority in Turkey. Once you get close to the Syrian-Iraqi border, you start getting a lot of ethnic groups splattered together. So it's not just the Kurdish, right? So the interesting thing is when you speak to Kurds, it's not a funny thing at all, but when you speak to Kurds, they talk about how much they were oppressed by the Turkish and by other groups and how they're a victim. And when you go to the smaller ethnic groups, they talk about how the Kurds oppressed them and how they're a smaller ethnic group. And so there's something about, I have one time a story. I was in Urfa, which is still on the Turkey side.
Mm-hmm.
And I was alone. I stayed by a couch surfer, but he was gone. So he just gave me a floor on the floor. And I kind of felt like I could get a hotel. It's super cheap. I just wanted dynamic. And then I heard music coming somewhere off, nice live music. And so I was just drawn. I was like, I needed something exciting. And I get this one of those like pay and a show.
All right.
Anyway, so like the payment was anyway, I just like had some tea and some baklava.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started dancing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go dance with them. So he's like going in a circle. Then I started doing my Hasidic dancing in the middle.
I'll just tell everyone that Shaul is a former Shiva Bachor.
Yeah.
Right?
I grew up Chabad.
He grew up...
I'm close to Chabad.
Yeah, he grew up Jewish ultra-Orthodox. And
ultra-Orthodox and Chabad is debatable, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was doing the good Hasidic, fiddle on the roof type dancing. And at the end of it, I got a round of applause from the whole people. And they were like, where are you from? And I was like, America. And they were just very proud. And I was sitting next to this person. She asked me where I'm from. And I said to her, like, Israel. And she was looking around being like, be quiet about it. And I asked her where she's from. And she was Kurdish. And basically, her family was very critical of the Turkish government and hated the Turkish government. But they were really scared to say anything because basically, that part of Kurdistan is also Turkish tourists come over there to see it. So most of the people there were Turkish, but they were like secretly Kurdish. And they felt like they didn't want to shit on Turkey. I can say it? Can I say shit?
Yeah, you can say shit.
Cool.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to...
We'll put many trigger alerts in the beginning of this episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, they were scared to like openly criticize. I mean, Erdogan doesn't allow critique in Turkey. So it was funny because we were both like hiding our identities. And then I met the family again in Diyarbakir and we became friends.
Just one moment. I just want to mention Urfa is also Kasdim, right?
Yes.
Is at least known to be the city where Abraham is from, right? Our father Abraham.
100%. Two things about Urfa. One, the Muslims there have a cave, which they believe is the cave that Abraham hid from Nimrod. Mm-hmm. So they also have that story. And around Urfa, the name of the place there is called Mamre. Alone Mamre. So already now I'm getting a sense of, and they all over there, like the funny thing is everybody wants to claim Abraham. So the Kurds are like, Abraham.
He's a Kurd.
He's a Kurd. He's obviously Kurdish, who came to the Levantine, but he was Kurdish.
Well, I think the Jewish Kurds will be very glad to hear that.
I'm sure.
Right.
I was happy to hear it. I was like, good. Yeah. So one thing that interested me about the Assyrians that live there in this region is they still speak Aramaic.
Right. So there's also another community, not the Kurds now. We're talking about the Christian Assyrian church, right?
Yes.
Which are one of the oldest churches in the world. One
of the oldest. Over there were two, I would say major, even though they're minor, but the two main ethnic Christian minorities in that whole region are the Assyrians and the Chaldeans. There might be a third that I'm forgetting, and they'll be very offended that I didn't bring them up.
Don't worry. I'm sure our listeners from that third minority will call and we'll fix that.
Well, yeah, we'll get some additions. So, and what's classically known about them is that they speak Aramaic, which for them is the language that Jesus spoke. For me, it's the language of Gemara. It's the language of this like quasi-language that I grew up studying, in yeshiva, but was never really fluent in, but like felt like, okay, let's be curious, can there be some dialogue? Especially because over this whole trip, unintentionally, I was realizing that I was like hitting the proto, like where Judaism comes from, kind of like, I mean, it's the Fertile Crescent. It really is, Göbekli Tepe is there. It's like where civilization kind of emerged from, but it's like proto-Judaism has roots there. And so somehow still engaging with that.
Both through Abraham and also through the Aramaic language, which is in the Talmud, in the Gemara.
Exactly. Yeah. And the landscape just being, we'll get to that a bit later, but the landscape that really captures this I mean, it reminisced me of the Yehuda Shomron and like the rolling hills and the nature. So in Mardin and Midyat, I wanted to meet Assyrians. So one of the things that I did was there's a famous Assyrian church. So I drive there, but it's one of those places where you have tour buses upon tour buses of people that come in, do the tour, 20 minutes and leave. So when I was trying to have a genuine conversation with someone, everybody treated me just like another tourist, like just pointing me to the next location. And I was like, okay, there's a beautiful church, but it's not
That's what we're here for.
Side point, if we can we circle around and come back? Yeah. One of the cool things about the Assyrians is they also didn't give up their old ancient gods either. They kind of integrated them. So you have in the Syrian churches, in a lot of the Syrian churches, you have a small part that's still intact that is for the worshipping of the sun god. The sun is very, very important.
Right, like from the ancient Assyrian, like in the ancient Assyrian Empire.
From the ancient Assyrian Empire, right. And part of the things is, I met this guy Arthur, and he was like, yeah, the cross predates Jesus. And he was talking about all the ways of like the ancient Assyrian culture that, in that part of the world, like in Europe, you took the paganism that had the winter solstice and you made it Christmas. Over there, they had the ancient Assyrian gods, and then they just put Jesus as kind of like the next Krishna reincarnation of the sun god. So you still have this like old, even really ancient tradition.
Beautiful.
Anyway, at this church, beautiful, learned this, was really nice, but kind of despondent. I didn't meet anyone. I was wandering off to another church, and as I was waiting outside, because it was locked, I met a guy there. His name is Arthur. He says he's from Sweden. And I'm a bit, and so he asked me where I'm from. I say I'm from Israel. Normally, I'm a bit suspicious if I bring up if I'm Jewish or not or Israeli or not. But with the Kurds, they're philo-Semitic. So mentioning Israel actually opens up doors and conversations. And then he says that he's an Assyrian. And back in I think it was the 40s or the 50s, there were attacks from the Kurds onto the Syrians. And so there was a massive Assyrian refugees migration to Sweden. So he grew up most of his life in Sweden. He was there for 40 years, never came back. It was crazy. I think he was like a gardener in something like very menial. The dude read so much. He was so familiar with Jewish theology, like ancient, like an ancient religion. He was like a walking encyclopedia of like ancient mythologies. And I was like, you're the most unassuming, quiet. He now retired. And now he basically comes back every summer to rebuild his old village home. And until it's ready, he moves back to Sweden for the winter because it's still too cold. And his goal is to move back to the village where his family's from, even though there's no more Kurds there. Sorry, there's no more Syrians there. It's pretty much just Kurdish because they all left. And there's somewhat of a tension between people who are like, we know that you're part of those who
left, yeah.
And trying to claim back property, but the property was destroyed. But anyway, And also, I didn't say this, I should have said this. In the summer, because his house isn't built, he sleeps on top of the church. He just sleeps out under the stars. Just a sweet guy. We became friends. He invited me to his village. And we spent the evening going out to his field. And as he said, Kotfinon Nueva, which in Gemara is Kotfinan Anavim.
This means picking grapes.
So we spent the day basically exchanging Aramaic to Aramaic and discussing the similarities and the relationship. Again, many groups that like, the Jews and us. And I've had this time and time again, the Greeks and the Jews, I was in Kyrgyzstan and this guy was like, you're Jewish? The Jews and the Kyrgyz. We're really close, very close. And I was like, good, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So it was with that kind of energy of
exchange. There was a beautiful recording. I think I'll insert it here.
Yeah.
It's a recording of you and Arthur comparing Shiv'at Aminim, the 7 types of fruit that the Holy Land was blessed in.
Right.
In Aramaic and in Hebrew. And it's very, very similar.
It's very similar. And also we were talking about it because that's what was growing there. You had the grapes, you had the pomegranates, you had the figs. So it wasn't like a symbolic, it really felt like I was basically inserted into a passage from the Gemara of like two people with a field and they're complaining, where does your line go? I was like, okay, this is the, this is where it happened.
I'm inserting Shaul in Ardo's recording now. Just listen to how similar the words in both languages are.
The 7 species of Israel, the Shivat Haminim in Hebrew and Assyrian. Chita,
حيطة
Saora,
سعورة
Rimon,
ريمونة
Zayit,
زيتونة
Tamar,
تمرة
Geffen,
عنوة
and
تانة
Te'enim.
تانة.
And we're back.
From there, got into Erbil,
So you took a bus across the border, right?
took a minibus. There's
Minibus.
no public transport in
public
Iraq.
transport.
Maybe there is, I don't know. I didn't go to Baghdad or to Mosul. In the Kurdish part, there's no public transport.
Right.
So everything is, when you say bus, you mean shared taxi.
All right.
But like a minivan. So it was like a minivan, and I took a minivan overnight from Midyat to
Iraq.
to Erbil, to Iraq. Yeah.
And the border is all calm, nothing. There's no problem there.
It was, I was held back also because I was an anomaly, I think. And I also had to pay some cash fee. I always have, whenever I travel, one of my pro tips is always have $100 somewhere in my bag with me, because the US dollar is always respected. And sometimes it's always good to just have a bit of money that needs to go, I don't know, to who, to what, it's there. So
Better not ask.
Here's $100. And that's,
It's gonna be.
I think it was actually the fee I was supposed to pay. I don't think it was,
right.
but there was enough bribery, anyway.
I don't want to be sued by the Iraqi border police.
Yeah, one thing. So I thought I wouldn't have any issues at all because the Kurds love the Jews. The border is still run by the Iraqis. So actually, if there's anywhere that I would have gotten problems, it would have been only at the border.
Right.
That would have been pretty much the only problem in and out of the country.
Because once you go in, you're already in Iraqi Kurdistan, and that's something else.
Because then you're dealing with the police, and the police are Peshmerga, and they're Kurds. So they have no beef with you. They should have beef with me anyway. I'm a nice guy, but I mean, like, there's no ethnic.
I
issues.
confirm.
Yeah. Relatively chill. Got to Erbil, and I got to Erbil basically, and it was one of those kind of very serene ideas because it was a developed city, but completely not. In a certain way, you said electricity shortages at certain times. You had a lot of rapid development. You also have a few parts which are like skyscrapers, because there's a lot of US investment and a lot of stuff like that. And also, it's a different language than the Kurdish that they speak in Turkey. So the Kurdish that I learned until now, the 5 words that would get people to smile at me, no longer worked. The style of clothing is slightly different. And they're more Arabic there.
All right.
So it's not like, you really do also feel that even though you just moved over and it's still Kurdish people, also because historically they were shut off more from each other. So they really kind of developed their own
culture,
their own subcultures. And I mentioned some things from Turkish Kurdish culture, and they just looked at me baffled, like they weren't familiar with it. So we spent 2 days there. It was funny because before my partner came, so I went on couch surfing. I met up with a local guy, and he's like, "What do you want to see?" And I was like, "I want to see Erbil. Give me, So first we went to the food market, which was wild and incredible and just fun.
Any recommendation? Any type of food
Iraqi food. Remember? Yeah, I don't think the food wasn't crazy. It was just the amount of my food experience in that part was, in that whole part, most of it was bread, like flatbread, a lot of meat, and then rice or beans, maybe a bit of chorba, bit of soup. But I mean, it wasn't like a nice meat, so it was good. If you're vegetarian, you might have a harder time there. But if you're a meat eater,
put the vegetarian trigger.
Yeah, exactly. But meat based, like, it's the whole Southeast Turkey. It's the best with some bit of ayran and the yogurt. It's if you want to be kosher, you have the ayran first, and then you wash it out with some arak. That it's kosher. And then he wanted to show me like what he was really proud of Erbil. So he drives me to a massive mall. And he walks around the mall, and first of all, I was only entertained because I'm like, it's fascinating that you think that this is somewhere I want to go. My heart was like, first of all, it reminded me of the US. It was like a mall in the US, which again, for the location is wild. But also for me, I'm like, I didn't come to Iraq to, go hang out with Israelis. You know what I mean? So, but like, you don't go back to see the same shit. Yeah. Then my partner came, we went around the market, beautiful market spaces, really beautiful, very friendly people. And then you have like both sides of it. You really have also like street vendors and wild and hectic, kind of like Cairo or Delhi type energy. But our goal was to head out. So our first goal was to go to Saran Rawanduz area, which is the northeast. And we planned to stay by a couch surfer over there. He basically had to be in Erbil for some paperwork. So he picked us up, and he also, like, on the way, we went on a few different stops. So we were speaking about how the Kurds in Iraq see themselves, and most of his family's from Iran. So he's like an Iranian Kurd, but now lives in Iraq, and speaking with the family dynamics and the Kurds live. It was very interesting conversations, very, very sweet. And we spent the day, we drove up to Saran, and our goal was to go for a hike through the Rawanduz Valley. Even though it was like 40 degrees outside, there were supposed to be parts that were supposed to be shaded. So in the morning, wake up, it's not very clear exactly where to start, also trying to find the right place with shade, but our host told us like a general area, go over there. We got out of his house, we walked to the road, and we see a bunch of students hovering around a minibus. So we asked them if they're going to this spot. They said, no, but they can take us. They asked us, what are you guys doing here? And like, right next to the university. And we're like, well, we were staying by this professor. And they all laughed because we were staying by their professor. Some of them hated him, some of them loved him, but like, they thought it was very cool. And we asked them, where are you guys going? And it was Iraqi Independence Day. And so they had a day off. And so they rented a minibus. And they were going to this, basically small town. Basically, the northern part of Iraq is very luscious. It's very green, a lot of rivers. So a lot of what they do over there is they put these swings inside the rivers, and they put like the nice sitting mats all around the rivers. So you basically just get your feet wet. It helps you stay cool. The general temperature is much cooler there. It's also shaded. And you just sit there and chill. Nice. It's like kind of like a public service. Some places you can rent some things, but it's really just like, it goes on and on and on. So they rented a minibus and they packed. What did they pack? They packed teas, coals, meat, tomatoes, onions, lavash, the classics, right? And they said, do you want to come with us? And I looked at my partner and they were like, of course we're going to come with a bunch of young people and chill for a day. So it was 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30. Remind you, this is a culture that doesn't, so they're religious. The women most of them are wearing hijabs, and they don't drink. I've never seen more chayas, more energy, more life. 8 o'clock in the morning, they're singing and clapping and kululuing. Oh. And, they were like suddenly trying to have my partner sit in the back with the girls. And like, but we sat like next to each other right in the corner. But they were so respectful of it. They were kind of being like, we culturally separate. But, I also found it fascinating growing up Haredi, where you have firmness means you don't see the woman behind the three mechitzas between you. That you have people who are still religious and conservative, but going on trips together. But still understanding that there's norms like this it makes sense to me, right? You don't have to be completely isolated and still have boundaries. We're partying on the bus. We get to this spot and we basically spend most of the day chilling and talking. And then they do the food prep and everybody's helping and contributing. It's a beautiful, beautiful energy. And there's a certain point after the meal where the guys kind of drift off to the guys and the girls kind of drift off to the girls. And they kind of tell my partner, like, I think you should go with the girls, like maybe spend time with them. So actually, they asked me where I'm from. And I said, Israel. And we talked about Israel-Palestine a little bit. And they had a lot of places when I travel, which are, let's say, Muslim majority countries. When I meet people on couchsurfing, they classically just know of Jews from the stereotypes. And I just tell them like, no, we don't own all the banks. They're like, oh, okay. And I just try to, it's not really hate as much as it is ignorance. Like they're not invested in our story. Most Kurds actually love the Jews and love Israel because the Jews have accomplished to do what they've dreamt to do for so long, which is have their own sovereignty. The difference between them and the Jews is that we were living in a diaspora, right? And then we had to come back here. With the Kurds, it's just still there. They're just staying where they always stayed, but they're just always under someone else's rule. And then my partner was speaking actually to the girls about marriage and about modesty and yada, yada, yada. But it was an extremely beautiful day. I spent the day with them. We drove back and then we went to get tea with some of the students and the professor together. We kind of like bridged that gap. It was very, very cute. From there, the issue was precisely that it's hard to get around the country because there's no real roads, and a lot of the roads are also really bad. There's one city called Ahmedi in the north, which was supposed to have remnants of Zoroastrian culture that we wanted to go to.
I'll just say Ahmedi. Maybe I'll put a question mark on it, but it's a known family name, and there is a famous actor called Idan Ahmedi. I will check it out if his family is from there.
You also have, we're going to skip ahead for a moment, there's a city called Al-Kosh. And when I met the people there, they're like, in Israel, there's a city called Al-Kosh. And there is.
That's true.
There is an Al-Kosh. And it's from the Kurdish Jews that moved over.
Amazing.
One thing that I haven't really done so much is I don't really have so many Iraqi Jewish friends, sadly. But I would love to, compare the stories that I heard about the Jews from those who remain versus the people whose grandparents had to flee.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. So
you went to Ahmedi?
Ahmedi, we wanted to go to the Zoroastrians. And so the Zoroastrians are mostly in Iran. They're really one of the older religions. I think they're 6,000. I'm going to spitballing here. I think it's older than Judaism.
Yeah.
It's a very ancient religion. They are the first religion that focuses on duality. They have very clear good and evil. And they worship the elements. They're somewhat pagan in that sense, which to me is very, very fascinating.
Yeah.
As far as I know Zoroastrians live in India, in Gujarat, and in Iran. And what was left in Iraq was, I think there were, but I didn't get to meet, mostly just, old ruins.
All right.
The only way for us to get to Ahmedi properly was a taxi. There's just no way to get there otherwise. Or your own car. So we rented a car. And sadly, that day, my partner had food poisoning. So she spent the car just lying down kind of in the days. But I said, thank God the day is just a day of transit because it takes you 4 hours to get there. If there were normal roads, maybe an hour and a half. But because everything is so winded and so broken. So we spent the day mostly in the car. And the complexity was the next day was Yom Kippur. Now Yom Kippur, I don't fast, but I don't speak. I do Tanit Tibor. So when you're traveling and you can't speak, it's a bit funky. It's funny.
Yeah.
So the next day we just spent walking around Ahmedi. Very cute, very quiet town.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's hanging on a cliff.
It's exactly. It's what makes it famous is that it's a city on the cliff. So basically the city goes as far as the cliff goes. And what also means is it's forced to stay a small city because there's nowhere to expand. You can't, you can't build off the cliff. That day was also maybe we could have had more adventures there, but very simply we were broken or silent.
All right. Happens too.
Happens. Part of the trips is also, and we saw the Zoroastrian stuff and they were just abandoned. It wasn't even like kept as some form of, just like that lot that kind of was ignored. We kind of snuck in and then you just basically see half ruins, very, very vague stuff. Just, abandoned lots, really. From there we go to Duhok. Now this is really where, to me, the adventure really starts. I was also telling to my partner, we're like, okay, this was nice, Iraq, but is this what we came for? Like, we're missing some of authentic experience. So going back to what I mentioned about Turkey, about a lot of the different ethnic groups around that part, which is actually right by the Tigris, which is really like Tigris and Euphrates, like that's the symbol of the Fertile Crescent, the birth of civilization. There's a lot of different ethnic groups over there. The Assyrians live over there. Chaldeans live over there. This other Christian ethnic group. The Yazidis live over there. The Yazidis are known as being also a very ancient people. They claim to be the oldest religion, as kind of we all do in one way or another. And have certain things connected with Judaism. They believe the Jews stole their black book or something like that. There's interesting. We also play some complex role.
We apologize for that.
We apologize for that. That and Jesus, we're sorry. Sorry, it was the Romans. The Chaldeans, the Yazidis, and what mostly infamous about them was that when ISIS was around them, we met people who was there during the Battle of ISIS. The ISIS basically got up to Al-Qosh. So Al-Qosh was the final battle, and they talked about this idea of like they saw ISIS trucks driving up, and the women were fleeing from the other side, and they saw Kurdish and American planes drop, kind of like save them as this final thing. But Daesh, ISIS, there's a stereotype that Yazidis worship the devil, that they worship Satan, and so for the jihadists, you could do anything to them.
Yeah,
which is why they were genocided. I think they told us that they were genocided 33 times in history. Most Yazidis, there are still many Yazidi women who are sex slaves. There was a story recently that Israel saved one from Gaza. And even their big city, Sinjar, is mostly camps, humanitarian camps.
So it's still a refugee camp.
It's still a refugee camp. The Yazidis are pretty much still refugees. We'll get to the Yazidis.
But let's just say, since we already started, let's just say that the Yazidis don't worship the devil.
Yes.
Just to make sure it's clear.
No. I asked them directly, do you worship the devil? They said no. So I think we go. They believe in, so it's funny, they believe in a one God, but they believe in angels. And angels have, kind of in Judaism, Chakir would have something called Shittuf, where there's many gods, but they don't have their own power. But the highest one is Malak Taos, which is the peacock god.
Right, which is literally, we just said Malak Taos. In Hebrew speakers will know Malach Tavas, right? The peacock.
The peacock
angel.
God.
Oh, God.
By the way, I do have to say, if I was to pick an animal as a god, peacock, top 3. Easy.
For sure.
Top 3. And because Malak Taos holds good and evil, and they worship Malak Taos, I think from there it progenited that they worship Satan. Anyway, there were all these different groups, and we wanted to just get a sense. Also, I wanted to get a sense of Jewish Kurdish culture. I tried to speak to Turkish people, and Diyarbakir had one, but it was destroyed in the fight between the Turks and the Kurds. And it was a bit harder in Turkey because there was a bit more of like a, larger hostility
towards Jews.
Even though the people I met were extremely hospitable. But they knew nothing about the Jews. And when I was in Erbil and I mentioned the Jews, when I went to, they were like, oh, there's like, first of all, I was in this church and he's like, where are you from? I said, Israel. He points to me, he's like, oh, you guys have 2 brains. And I was like, thank you. I could just treat me as an equal, would be fine. And he's like, did you go to the Jewish community area? And I was like, well, he's like, over here is where the Jews used to live. So I went there and it's really still abandoned ruins. And I asked this woman over Google Translate, like, sorry, like, do you know where the Jews are from? And I don't know. Now I'm interpreting into the story, but I think maybe she was scared that I was like trying to reclaim something. So she really just like walked off very quickly, but very little to no remnants.
Uh-huh.
What I did know was there was supposed to be a few famous Jewish burial sites, Kvarim. I think Chizkiyahu, maybe not. There's some Navi, and also there was a Navi called Nahum, who was the last of the Triasar, the last prophet, who was supposed to be in Iraq, in Al-Qosh. So it was also my bid to try and find something Jewish. So we hitchhike this whole time we're hitchhiking. Besides for the one time we took a taxi, everything else was hitchhiking. Each one has its own story.
So hitchhiking from Amedi to Duhok?
Yes. And from Duhok now to Alkosh. One thing I do have to say overall about my time there, I've rarely seen such hospitality in my life. I call it aggressive hospitality because there's a certain point, like we were driving in the morning, somebody was driving us, like 8:30 in the morning. And then he stops off at a corner store. And then he tries to give us money and like 4 Red Bulls. And we're like, first of all, money's not the issue here. Number 2, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. But he was drinking the Red Bulls. So we drank with him, right? The Iraqi version of a Red Bull, right? And again and again and again, they would be these people who were so aggressively kind. It was unnerving, suspicious, uncomfortable, but very touching.
Yeah.
So we get the ride to Alkosh. And again, one thing I wanted to do is somehow break into the local culture. So I went on couch surfers and I found there's one couch surfer from Alkosh. And there's these 2 younger guys, these 2 brothers, who work with internationals who come to Alkosh. Alkosh is a very interesting city because it's an ancient Chaldean monastery is in Alkosh. It's one of the ancient cities. And you have a lot of sometimes you have NGOs based out of there, and there's a relationship with France that I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there's a French,
of course,
Alkoshian connection.
If there is a Christian community, there is a French
there's a French person that gets there where no.
Yeah.
And they basically allowed us to show us around. Also, something about it is because Alkosh is so close to Mosul, so close to the Iraqi side, there's no official borders, but we're not allowed to sleep there at night unless you get special permission from the mayor. You have to get special permission to be able to sleep there. Otherwise, you have to go back to Duhok, which was the initial plan was to somehow get a hitchhike, right? The 2 brothers, they because they were connected, they called this person, which called that person, which called that person, they called that person. You know,
right.
We know this in Israel very well. And they got us to stay for the night. Similarly, we find the cave of Nahum.
Right. With the prophet.
The prophet. And it's locked.
Of course.
And so we go to the nearby museum, which I'll talk about the museum in a moment. And we asked the guy, how do we get in there? He's like, no, you need to call the mayor. Only she has the keys. Female mayor, also very progressive. So I called the mayor and I said, Shalom, assalamu alaikum. That's also no, I don't remember what I said. Something, hi. I came all the way from Israel to this place. I'm sure I would love to see the kever. Anyway, she said, sure, no problem. 20 minutes later, this large guy is running, kind of out of breath, comes, bring us the keys. Cave is beautiful. There's a bima there. There's like 2 sidurim, which means people have come sometime in the past. In the museum, there was a photo that I sent you. You can also share it, whoever, which said,
we'll put it on our Instagram.
Yeah, basically, speaking from them, not for Iraqi Jews directly, but apparently for Iraqi Jews, their main chag was Shavuot. And on Shavuot, they would do Ola Regel, they would go up to the cave of Nahum and make a great feast over there.
So that was the main Jewish pilgrimage
in that area.
In that area.
So much so that they have the famous saying, Mish lo ra'at chagigat Shavuot etzel Nahum lo yada chagiga ba'olamo. Something like they talk about by the temple.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen the celebration of Nahum,
you don't know what celebration looks like.
You don't know what celebration.
Right. So I went over there, I said some tehillim, I sang a niggin. There was a sentiment of like Mekadesh et HaMakom and to have a certain sense of. And when we went back and we spoke to the museum owner, also sweetheart of a guy. He also showed me the Chaldean alphabet, the Uluf Bais, which was so gorgeous. And he remembers the Jewish neighbors, Musa and his wife, and he said they were super sweet and super kind. When we were there was also a TV crew doing something to show about the museum. It was like one of those ethnographic museums. They saw me and my partner, 2 white people, loved this. They wanted to put us on TV, and it was fascinating. What did they want us to talk about? They wanted to talk about the religious and cultural tolerance that we experienced, how the Christians and the Muslims are peace. And the fact that I was Jewish, they loved it. It's like, yes, tell us, that, I'm a Jew and I'm here connecting. And I found it very fascinating that when you speak to the people, each of the groups within themselves talk about their persecution from the other groups and their dynamics, But nowadays, the narrative that we want to push narratives onto our past and onto our future was coexistence and cohabitation.
I think we can, regarding to your next destination, as you said, the saving of the Yazidis by the Peshmerga, by the Kurdi militia, was a very important moment, right?
Yeah, yes. Very much. I'm going to hold that for a moment. I'm going to get back to when we get to the Kurds. Very beautiful day. That night, we spent time with the Chaldean family. Mm-hmm. And they asked us what we were doing the next day. And we said, Yazidis, we're going to see the Yazidis in Lalish. And the father was like, oh, don't they worship the devil? And it was so fascinating, just learning of like how much they were persecuted because of that stereotype. And it's just still being present and prevalent. And also they didn't know much. And when I asked my friends, do you want to go check out the Yazidi holiday? They were like, no, we're good. Yeah, so we were kind of surprised that they had zero interest. Mm-hmm. We said, okay. And our goal was just to go there for the day. And by that night, head back to Duhok. So that the next day we had to split ways already. It was our last day. Mm-hmm. We get to Lalish in the morning. One of the things about Lalish, it's their holiest city.
It's the Jerusalem of the Yazidis.
It's the Jerusalem of the Yazidis. But the whole Jerusalem is basically Jerusalem, if the whole Jerusalem was the Temple Mount. Which means that in the whole city, you have to go barefoot. You don't wear shoes. Mm. And the way that it also works is that there's a lot of families. There is also somewhat of like a hierarchy, and certain families can't marry other families. Like in every community, there's like the dirt underneath, no shine. But different families had different areas. So when families would come, they would sleep in different parts of the mountainous regions. Now, we knew we were coming, we planned the trip accordingly so that we would be there on one of the chagim. What we didn't realize that we'd be getting there for the chag.
So we were talking about Nahum, now we're talking about the Yazidi pilgrimage of the year.
The Yazidi pilgrimage. And so Yazidis from all around the world come back to Iraq and to Lalish it's a 7-day holiday also. And so it's packed. We're talking about maybe 20,000 Yazidis all on this mountain. It's a festivity. Very few tourists. I would say, I think overall of my whole day, I saw 15 people who were not Yazidis. Most of them were either researchers in local universities studying Yazidi culture or Yazidi music, or they were those adventurous backpackers that travel, to the remote parts of the world to capture, to go to Ethiopia for that one, pilgrimage. And me and my partner were just like two backpackers who really into the cool local shit. But part of what was so beautiful over there was two things. I mean, it's one thing that's two, which was since ISIS, it's still deep ingrained in them. And so, first of all, they're very excited when foreigners come. Foreigners mean exposure. It means being known. It means maybe next time they won't be forgotten by the world. Second of all, because they've said they had so many genocides, and this one was very close to full genocide, they're right now in the process of converting Ter Sheba'al Peh to Ter Shebichtav.
Like converting the
traditions and writing them down methodologically. What's done? When is it done? Now, this is what they're currently doing because the leadership, the Sheikh Baba, realized that they don't know what's coming. They don't have stability, and the Yazidis are going to lose their traditions if it's not recorded. So it's fascinating to see a culture that's now moving to written form, and it's mostly academic, right? Because the tradition itself is supposed to stay oral tradition. There's this one dance where they kind of dance like the constellations. And what's complicated is you can't record it because it has to have a night, and there can't be any external forms of light. So there's like the Sami dance. So beautiful dance. So I couldn't record it, so I can't share it. And there's something beautiful about something's stay. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is the role of women in the community changed. One thing that we saw there was that women were wearing traditional male clothing. And normally it's not something that you see, right? Women normally have beautiful clothes, and if the men are wearing it, it's very distinct. Women were wearing it exactly because the men were wearing. And what we were told is a lot of women fought against ISIS. And the power dynamic shifted because they were in the front lines. Like the Kurdish women are also fighting. all in all, over that trip, we were invited to everything, to the front long table, to eat with the Sheikh Babas and everything, because to them, even though to us we were just some random backpackers, to them we represented people coming, people interested. So we were invited to everything. We were front lines of everything, which was such a blessing. And halfway through the day, it was very clear to us, we want to stay here as late as possible. Also because in the morning, early morning, they were supposed to do like a special singing, like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I wanted to be up for that. And they did a special dance in the morning. And we wanted to maximize as much as we could, because I think we were halfway through and there were like 3 days left, and we had to leave the next day, but where do we sleep? So again, the locals were extremely, extremely kind. And so we borrowed some bedding, and then we went up right outside of the mountains. We went up to a little corner and put our tent. Around 10 minutes later, police come, some security forward, and they're like, it's not safe for you here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't camp outside. You have to camp inside. And so we come back inside and we see on top of one of the houses, it's flat. So we're like, maybe we'll just sleep on the roof. And then we're like, do we ask the people? Do we not ask people? I'm like, let's ask. It's their roof. So we go around and I say, sorry, sir. And he looks at me, he's like, what happened? He's like, can we sleep on your roof? And he's like, of course. So we go up and you have to like do like a little hop and a skip. So we jump up on the roof, put our stuff down, and then I see he's behind me, the man, and he has a phone, like in my face. I'm like, oh. So I pick up the phone and I'm like, he says, hi, hello. He's like, hi, I forgot his name, the son of this man. He just wants me to let you know that if you need anything, food, drink, a blanket, whatever you need, please just ask. He's here for you. And I said, thank you so much. We're really good. We're fine. So we fall asleep. We wake up sunrise at 5:30 in the morning. We're getting up. We're kind of like slowly stretching. And as we're like just starting to like mumble good morning and stuff, we turn around and the man there is with a tray of tea and cookies.
Wow. All right.
And before we know it, he's standing up there and giving it to us. And we're like, wow, this is the hospitality, the Yazidi hospitality that's untalked about. It was unbelievably generous, unbelievably warm, unbelievably kind.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we spent the last few hours there. Kind of sad that they were missing, but you take what you take. I bought a few tchotchkes to remember the thing. I'll show you after, like a bracelet with a little malak taus thing, like a little peacock.
Put a photo with
Malavi, which is funny because I don't think they do the beads. So I think it's just more of I don't know. And then we went back to Dohuk, and then we went our separate ways. But the whole trip was, first of all, it made me better understand my Judaism, for sure.
It's beautiful.
Made me understand kind of the region of where the Judaism came from, and also understood complexity of narratives, of communities, of little groups, and the stories that they tell themselves versus everyone tells each other. And I would highly recommend it. Now it's still underdeveloped. Nobody goes. The funny thing about that time is they said, don't go too close north because it's near Turkey, not too far west because it's too close to Syria, not too far east because it's Iran, but in the center it's gorgeous. So, if you stay in the places that you can go, gorgeous trip.
So hopefully, definitely if you're Israeli and you do have a foreign passport, like Shaul has, we recommend.
I would say if you're Israeli and the situation with Turkey gets better, very, very southeast Turkey is also highly, highly recommended. Diyarbakir, Orfa, Mardin, Midyat, gorgeous, fascinating, ancient, cities. And if you have a foreign passport, Kurdistan is fantastic. And hopefully soon we'll get to check out the Iranian Kurds. That will be beautiful.
Inshallah. All right. Thank you so much, Shaul.
Yeah, my pleasure.